I did want to ask you, what do you think about contracts and consequences for school refusal kids? Do you have an opinion on that and success, or has it worked?
It's funny. I mean, we haven't used contracts. We haven't implemented contracts per se into our work, and I think that contracts in our area tend to evoke um, imagery of or reminders of suicide contracts.
Ooh, I didn't even
Meaning,
hear that.
yeah. So, and not to go on a tangent, but in our world, when you think about contracts, it used to be a thinking that if you would have someone sign a contract to keep themselves safe, that they would be more committed to keeping themselves safe. And there was no evidence that signing a contract had any effect on one's
Yeah,
ability to keep oneself safe. But at the same time, but if you frame it like a contract, it doesn't seem to have any sort of effect. But if you instead develop a safety plan, in the
yes,
case of developing a a thoughtful plan of monitoring yourself and assessing how you're doing, and then coming up with a plan to know who to identify, etc. That is very effective. And we
yes,
use the same kind of approach with school refusal too, in that what we wanted to do is have some sort of kind of plan of where we agree on a goal that we all have in mind. And one of those goals usually is school reentry of some level. And we talk about how we can work towards graded reentry and what it would take to do that, both what supports are needed as well as what incentives can possibly be used. And so I think that we think of it as an incentive plan. And I'll explain how we distinguish consequences versus incentives in a
yeah,
second. But I think that it's important to recognize across behavior change, whether it's reentry in school or other, that for some kids, some behaviors are harder than others. We want to acknowledge when they are putting in hard work. And so we have found that oftentimes, until we find an incentive that the kid actually cares about, it's so hard to make any sort of traction, because the primary issue in many of these kids is that they aren't motivated. They're not intrinsically motivated to go back to school. Everything about them is telling them that they don't want to go back to school, and it's a miserable experience. And so we do rely on some extrinsic external rewards in order to get them there, as a way to kind of shape up behavior, and then we can reduce it with time. So we do use incentives, and we do use a graded plan, and we find that the benefits of that are a couple. In that, one, it gives us at least some sort of benchmark to work towards, and if there's some disagreements about whether or not it's valuable to return to school, at least we know that up front. So both from the kids and the parents, we can know whether that's something that they care about. The second thing is it also gets some buy-in from the school. So one of the first things that we do when we work with a family is that we, have a joint meeting with the school, where we talk about some of these things about a school reentry plan, and it at least gets them to know that we're invested in school reentry. And then that allows them to free up to say, okay, as long as that's our goal, we can work with you, and here are some resources that we can provide, here are the supports that we can provide. And it's not the approach of, hey, this kid is anxious or depressed, and so he can't come to school, and so we're going to write permissions to keep him out of school. Schools tend to be a little bit more defensive when you take that approach to it.
yeah,
So we want to approach them with a collaborative
yeah.
a posture, so that we get everyone involved. So that's our general. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking, but the contract that we work towards is really more of a joint plan that we collaboratively come to.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because I've seen it used throughout my son's therapy, and I've seen people write about it. I personally don't think it works. I haven't seen or heard that it works. And same with consequences, like, we'll take away this or that. My husband and I remember we went to a therapist ourselves because my son wouldn't go. And he was we worked through a list of consequences. And I can't believe we wasted so much time. It did nothing. So
And so, but it may end up functioning in a similar way, but the reframing is really important. We do work with families to institute what we call daily renewable rewards. And what that means is that it really tries to help parents stay focused on incentives and rewards rather than falling back into some kind of unintended punishment system.
Yes, yeah.
The challenge for all of us is that we think we're doing, we're trying to motivate our kids by developing, giving them incentives, but it very quickly turns into some kind of punishment.
Yes,
and we
yeah.
know from decades of behavioral research that rewards work, punishments don't always work. They can stop behavior in the short term, but it comes with some nasty side effects. So, but rewards and reinforcement do work. So how do you help yourself distinguish those things? Well, first, we do start from a place, and this is where it takes some reframing. We start from a place of acknowledging for the rest of the day. Okay, the child doesn't get up then. Then what? Well, now you're not going to get the phone for the rest of the week. And then suddenly they're building, falling more and more into debt and that they can't get out of. And there's no way. And suddenly they won't have any phone for the next year. And then what leverage do you have as a parent? None, zero leverage. So instead, what you have to do is really flip it on its head and say, look, you start the day And what that depends on is making sure that the reward really is reinforcing. So you have to get something that the kid really cares about. And B, you have to have a parent who commits to it. So that's the other challenging thing.
It's really hard. As a parent, I know how hard it is to take that phone away.
Yeah.
To not give it to them.
Yes, and this is where technology can kind of help, and that even for things like phone and for Wi-Fi access and stuff like that, you can cut them off at the source, and so you can go online and you have parent controls, and you can simply just cut off the Wi-Fi or the data plan on a daily basis.
Yes.
Phone companies have made that